I don't mean to be rude or annoying or a hater, but we gotta wrap this demure shit up by yesterday. No hate to the original creator, Jools. It's just when it gets to that point where brands start using it for marketing and it's just everywhere you see. And again, it's like really helping out that creator, so I'm not honestly that mad because period, she deserves. It's just then you start thinking, like, are all these random brands that are using it in their social media campaigns giving credit to that creator? The creator, Jools, has literally said that this is, like, gonna fund her surgery and, like, all this stuff. So that's amazing for her. Sometimes, though, it just kind of reminds me, and this is not in regards to this specifically or this creator specifically, literally at all, but it's kind of frustrating sometimes to feel like everything is just so based on TikTok, and it's almost like nothing is really unique anymore, it feels like, because like real life commercials on TV will have all these references, and then you like watch a show and they're like talking about their Instagram story, and I get like things change and culture changes as technology changes, and like the media that we consume is gonna be, at least to some degree, but usually a lot, you know, a reflection of our current society and our current technology and all of that. But I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's just too oversaturated, especially, you know, living in New York, riding the subway and stuff. You will see these ads and sometimes they're just so like, okay, that was a TikTok trend. And there's just, I think it's like a lack of originality that is what bothers me. And I think it's also a very fine line between being trendy and relevant and then being authentic and original, and, you know, then also following algorithms and yeah, just staying relevant. So I know for myself that's something that's kind of hard as a creator, and it's sometimes frustrating when, you know, you put a lot of effort into something that you feel is really unique and you feel proud of, or like that you just worked hard on, and it gets like no engagement or no views, and then you do like a dumb trend that takes 2 seconds, or use a trending audio and you get like 1 million views, and it's like, okay, like I can't have my whole page just be viral moments. So I don't know. Let me know what you think, but I better not see y'all. No, I'm just kidding. I don't actually care. It's not that deep, but there was something, I forget who posted it. I think it was like a news page, but they were just combining all these current references from like Brat Summer to Demure to all this stuff, and I literally posted up my close friends, like, I know I'm getting old because this is, like, annoying to me. But after breaking it down, it makes sense. Like, it's not just, like, oh, you're getting old thing, or, like, oh, you don't want technology to advance or anything. It's, like, what's the line between staying relevant and then just, like, being too much of a follower to the point, especially in marketing and stuff, where you're just kind of, like, recycling the same things. And then also that's part of it, too, is, like, if something is a trend, like a little phrase or a sound or something, it usually does start from somebody random, or like a smaller creator, or just, you know, somebody. And so I don't think in every situation people get the credit that they deserve. But it does look like Miss Jools is getting her credit. Let's hope that she's satisfied, and let's hope that these brands are compensating her. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Stella herself podcast, y'all. Today we have an iced Americano from Variety Coffee. I don't know what they do to this coffee, y'all. It's really good. It's roasted locally, I think in Brooklyn. They know how to make a good iced Americano. It's pro. It's amazing. Their coffee is just really good. But I don't know if it's just stronger, because I'm pretty sure this would be like 2 shots of espresso, and it just has me on one in a good way. Like, it's doing what it needs to do. But when I get a double espresso from Starbucks or Dunkin', it does not hit like this. So shout out to Variety. I turned 26 last month, and that means my brain is fully developed. I think there are some studies that say it's really fully done when you're 27, but I'm pretty sure at this point it's pretty much fully developed. And I just wanted to share some realizations that I've had, and just kind of how you can look at life differently. This is kind of the time where people start to freak out a little bit. Like 26, it's like, oh shit. You know, it's like, I'm not in my early 20s anymore for sure. Because 25, at least for me, I was like, I'm still like, it's just 25. But 26, I was not scared to turn 26, but now it's kind of like, I feel 30 coming up, And all the years prior, I never felt that, which like I shouldn't, you shouldn't feel that at that, if you're any younger, because it is in the future. But I think that my brain is fully developed. And again, that 30 is coming up. It's not, next year. It's not the year after. We have a little bit of time, but it is starting to become on the horizon. I feel like I just think so much more logically now, and I'm able to fully see situations for what they are. I would say I feel like I have a lot more control over my life, which that's not to say that I didn't before, but I think now I'm just way more aware of how all of my decisions impact, the trajectory of my life. And I think that also just comes with having more life experience. It's weird because in some ways I feel a lot braver and more courageous and more willing to take, risks or like get out of my comfort zone. At the same time, I feel almost more cautious of certain things because I just am able to fully think through like how something will go. For example, there was this time where my friends and I think I was 17 at the time, we were with this guy that was my friend's friend, and he was like, I know this really cool lookout point, we can take pictures, we just have to like climb over these rocks. And it was sketchy, but I just like didn't feel afraid. Like I was just like, yeah, like if he says it's fine, it's probably fine. And like I just wasn't scared. We had to like go through this little cave, and it's like we easily could have been stuck. The tide could have come in, which it did come in. Luckily, not enough to the point where we were stuck or anything. God forbid. Like, thank God. I think that's another big thing is, like, just realizing how close you were in some situations to it being a bad situation. So I would say I just think through things a lot more, which is interesting because I have always been a little more cautious, just, growing up. I didn't and I don't really crave, like, adrenaline like that. Like, I'm not gonna go on a roller coaster or, like, skydive or, like, do anything crazy. Like, I just don't. It's not really my personality. I like to feel nice and safe. So it's interesting that I feel even more so that way, and I'm able to kind of tell the difference. And I've actually heard from people who become parents or moms that they get way, way, way more cautious in that regard, like once they have kids, which totally makes sense as well. I remember I used to do things or like just stupid things, like hang out with a guy that, I know I didn't really like, or just, go to a party maybe, just, like dumb random decisions. Just like, oh, for the plot. And do you guys remember when like for the plot was way more used? Like it used to be way more trendy, I guess. I mean, people probably still use that, but I just don't really feel that anymore. I just feel like my time is a lot more precious now. So if I really don't feel like something is 100%, I'm most likely not going to do it, especially when it does come to dating, especially when it does come to just kind of like wasting time, like going out. Like if I want to go out, like I'm going to go out, because there's nothing like a good night to reset you, honestly. Like I had the best night out last weekend. It was perfect. I got the perfect amount of lit. It was just like a nice summer night. Everyone I met was nice. Like it was just cool. Like it was just what you wanted. Like I got home coherent. Like I was not too drunk. I was not too hungover. There was no drama. And I just felt very energized by that, and just being out and being like in the city and just feeling nice and socializing. Like it was perfect. So that's what I want a night out to feel like. So if I feel the slightest bit like I don't really want to go, or like kind of feel tired or this and that, it's just like I'm more likely to just say no at this point in my life. I can see all the steps, it's like, yeah, sometimes you could be caught by surprise, but it's like once you know yourself, it's kind of like, okay, like why would I do something if I'm not 100% about it? I also feel a lot more future focused, but also living in the present, if that makes sense. And I think, again, that kind of comes as a result of 30 coming up. And so I'm just a lot more aware of all of my actions and like what I'm doing to prepare for the future, and like making a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and like planning for the future and making the most out of now. Versus before, it's like, in your late teens, like 18, 19, and then your early 20s, it's like that just feels so far away, at least for me. Like, I just didn't really feel structured in that sense because I felt like I just didn't really need to be. It's like, oh, I'll get to that when it's time, which on one hand I think is healthy because, you know, I did enjoy a lot of those years, but now it's like, okay, let's lock in. That's the main thing, honestly. I feel way more locked in and just like I'm able to peep situations. So I would love to hear what you have experienced or felt since your brain is fully developed, if it is, and if your brain isn't fully developed, if you're under, you know, 25 or whatever, I would love to hear if you relate to any of that as you are now. So this does relate, but it's kind of different. So I've been reading this book called All the Single Ladies, Unmarried Women, and the Rise of an Independent Nation by Rebecca Traister. It's really good. I would definitely recommend it if you are married, if you want to get married, or if not, or if you're unsure. Like, just regardless, if you're a woman in this society, I would recommend reading this. Each chapter is kind of a different point of, you know, just being a woman and like getting married in relationships. I'm a little over halfway through, and basically the conclusion I've come to is just like, when it comes to getting married, like, it depends. Some things that really stood out to me, she has this whole section where she talks about how for a lot of society and kind of like traditionally, it's like, as a woman, you're better off married, period, than being alone. Instead of like, is this a healthy marriage? Is this marriage uplifting me? Is it making my life better? A lot of women even would rather stay or be in abusive, unhealthy, toxic relationships or marriage than be by themselves. That's sad. Unfortunately, that's the reality. That's not like a new crazy idea. That's just like how things have been. We're able to have a lot more say and choice in our lives and, you know, in our marriages if we decide to get married. So it's very interesting to read these statistics and then also think about, you know, sprinkle. Men still out-earn women in every category. This book talks a lot about, you know, finances and like the politics of being married versus single as a woman. There was a feature in the New York Times in 2012 titled Two Classes Divided by I Do. Reporter Jason DeParle contrasted the circumstances of two white women in Michigan, colleagues at a daycare facility, each with children and comparable salaries. One of them spent over half her income on rent, relied on food stamps, and could not afford to enroll her children in extracurricular activities or even take time off of work after surgery. The other enjoyed a comparatively high household income, lived in a nice house, took vacations, and had her kids in all these activities because she was married. Higher wages would help, you know, the first woman, and so would guaranteed paid leave. The lack of adequate pay protections and social policies that disproportionately make an impact on women are symptomatic of systemic gendered economic inequality. The problems of wage stagnation, pay inequality, unemployment, and other social policies that presume women not to be breadwinners are often obscured beneath the persistent social and political calls to partner. Marriage, we are all told repeatedly, will make it all okay. And then it talks about the second woman's husband who was a computer programmer. He had a comparable college degree and demographic background, but he made so much more money. So it's interesting that a job at a daycare facility, which, you know, primarily women would take, does not have all of these things, benefits and like higher wages and paid leave, because it's like, oh, well, if you're a woman, you should be getting married and your husband should be the breadwinner. So why would you need those things? Single women foot most of their own bills. They do not enjoy the tax breaks or insurance benefits available to married couples. There are more than 1,000 laws that benefit married people over single people. Health, life, home, and car insurance all cost more for single people. And apparently it is not a federal crime for landlords to discriminate against potential renters based on their marital status. So the point being, economic forces push women into less independent relationships because it's simply easier in that way. So that was very interesting. What I posted to my story earlier in this book, she says, we are still wired to see marriages as the happy endings to women's stories, the resolution to their quests. We simply don't ask the same questions about the fates of women who marry, don't consider the crises or simply even the fears, dissatisfactions, and loneliness that they may face within their unions as circumstances symptomatic of or particular to marriage, yet we easily and always consider single women's equivalent states as tied tightly to their unwed status. There are worse things than losing a man. There's losing yourself. So it's basically like, oh, if you're single and you're unhappy, you're dissatisfied, you're this, you're that, it's because you're single. But if you're married and you feel those things, it's like, it couldn't be because you're married. Like, you wouldn't even think of that, you know? She also talks about loneliness, and I thought this was so interesting because I just, in my last episode last week, talked about talking to people, getting acquainted with people, building community, making friends, and potential partners, you know, out in the wild and not on apps. And she specifically talked about how a lot of people, you know, there's like the stereotype of being lonely and single, but when you're single, for the most part, most people are actually a lot less lonely, like women at least, because you're doing more activities, you're getting out more, you're just around more people, versus when you're in a couple, you guys mostly are to yourselves. Even if you go out and stuff, it's like, your world almost becomes smaller in a lot of instances. So I thought this was super interesting too, and Gabrielle Solis in Desperate Housewives says it the best: when you're a pretty girl, you're never lonely. But not even in terms of like dating. It's just like you're with your friends more. You're like just doing things for yourself more, like different activities and like following your own interests. And like you can put yourself fully 100% as the priority. You don't have to consider someone else's, you know, thoughts or feelings like as you do when you're coupled up. This also was so interesting. And y'all know how I always talk about kind of the Disney princess example of how we're fed this fantasy from the time we're children of, once I get married, like I'll have a happy ending and that's, you know, my fairy tale happily ever after. So this paragraph spoke directly to that. She says, if loneliness is a want of intimacy, then being single lends itself to loneliness because the loving partnerships we imagine in comparison are always in our minds intimate. They are not distant or empty or abusive or dysfunctional. We don't fantasize about being in bad marriages or about being in what were once good marriages that have since gone stale or sexless or hard, creating their own profound emotional pain. Rather, we fantasize about having a man or woman with whom to share our travails, someone with whom we can discuss our pain and our fears. The partner we conjure when we don't have one is our special assigned person, whose responsibility and pleasure it is to care for us when we're sick, to comfort us when we're sad, to rub our feet, and to tell us everything's going to be okay. Of course, single people are lonely. Of course, we've all been lonely. For moments, for days, for endless chilled seasons of sequestrian. For some women, the loneliness may stem from, or be exacerbated by, the drain of having to be everything for yourself. I like this book because it kind of just sees everything from all sides, like, you know, to a degree, obviously. But basically it's not, you know, against marriage, but it's also not for marriage. It's kind of looking at it from all aspects and the pros and the cons. You just have to be smart about who you marry. Like, don't marry literally just for love, because it's such a, you know, business decision kind of, you know. There's so many things you have to consider, especially for the long term, especially if you have kids. And so it's just really important to make the smart decision. And just remind yourself that it's better, like the quote said, it's better to have lost a man than to lose yourself. The fantasy of marriage and of happily ever after really is pushed upon us. And it's just very interesting, you know, the pressure that women especially are put under to get married and to be married by a certain age, and that, oh, there must be something wrong with you if you're not married by this age or this time or whatever. And I think that forces people into a lot of unhealthy dynamics in relationships, because again, it's like, well, at least I have somebody. But you cannot be a pick-me. And it's just so much better, again, to be alone than in a bad situation. So, again, I'm not advocating for you to be single forever or to not get married. It's, like, so crazy to me when people treat having kids like no big deal, but then getting married somehow is, like, so insane. Like, especially when it comes to these celebrities, I'm sure a few examples may come into your mind where a couple will literally have kids together and it's like, oh, well, we're just not ready for marriage. It's like, but you were literally ready to have a kid. Like, that sounds way more complicated. And then also the whole thing of girls keeping a baby with a man that obviously does not like them to try to get the man back. Y'all, No. And I literally saw this girl just say this the other day, but she's like, both you and the baby are going to be in the house crying. Like, you need to take men at face value. Like, take their actions at face value. Do not wait for someone to change. Like, if a man is constantly doing whatever effed up to you, imagine how he's going to be as a father, you know? I also think it's very important to not be completely dependent on a man financially, but also just in any regard. Again, there's kind of like this fantasy that we have, like I just read in the book. You know, when we don't have a partner, it's very easy to just imagine this perfect person, and especially like a perfect man who's like always just gonna know like what to say and like know how to comfort us and all this stuff. Don't let the idea of this perfect man or this perfect partner prevent you from going out and creating your own community of support and of people that, you know, you can be there for one another emotionally. And, you know, it takes a village, like it does. And unfortunately, because of the nuclear family unit and all this stuff, like people are just very isolated and there is a lot less community. And it's like, all of this is connected, you know? I think, like, if you're a single girly, or even if you're not, I think it's just very important if you are a single girly, or just, you know, if you're not yet married and maybe you're unsure in your current relationship. I just think it's so important to build that strong foundation for yourself of independence, of community, of emotional support, and of just doing everything it is that you want to do so that you don't get into a relationship or like a marriage that is going to make you lose yourself. And that's not to say, because, you know, even in the healthiest relationship, there's still going to be issues and conflict and stuff is still going to come up. But like, there's a difference between that and then like making like a bad business decision by like marrying someone that is going to ruin your life financially or emotionally or physically, like, you know. So if you have that foundation again of, I have a backup plan, like even if my man is the sole provider, it's like I still am able to leave at any time because I got myself, okay, we planned ahead just in case. I got my own. To have your own community of support so you're not solely relying on him for emotional support, and then just to have your own life. And this also just, I think, creates a healthier relationship, because hopefully by doing all of those things you will attract a healthier person. Not to say that's guaranteed, because a lot of psychotic narcissistic guys, well, I mean people, but like, you know, guys they will go for someone that is very secure in themselves, and like it's kind of like a extra fun challenge for them. So you gotta stay on point. Dust repellent, you know, narc repellent. So hopefully by having the repellent and being aware, you can attract another person that is like on that same vibe type of time, should we say. That's just so much less likely to turn into a codependent relationship or just toxic relationship. So yeah, it's like there are a lot of benefits to marriage, but there's also a lot of negatives if you are to get into the wrong marriage. It's kind of a tricky one. I would love to hear your thoughts on any of that. I just like, it's crazy that for most places the norm is to get married, and this has changed a lot within the past however many years, but especially in more rural areas and in the Midwest and stuff, the standard age of getting married is very young. So it's just crazy to think that like I'm just now feeling like, okay, my brain's fully developed. I can finally like think and see the world clearly. And it's like, in a lot of places that would be like, why aren't you married yet? Like, that's so old. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm like, I just realized like this year, you know? And now it's even crazier because I can see the difference in like a girl that's in her very early 20s versus someone in their mid or late 20s. It's just like, you look still so young in like, not like in a just like youth way, but like in a childish way. Like, you don't even really lose your baby fat from your face until like, I don't know, 23, 24, 25, you know? Like, you're so grown. It's just like, ew. And there's guys that will only date like a 21-year-old or like even younger. Like, ugh. Psychotic. So have your high standards and create a life for yourself. We always think of it as like, yeah, like the ultimate perfect marriage, and it's never like, okay, what if it's dysfunctional? What if it's toxic? What if it's this? What if we're in financial ruin? What if this and that? Like, So you gotta think about all these things and don't let desperation get you into a bad situation. So last but certainly not least, but I mean it is the least. If you watched my TikTok live, I talked about this. I have another date story time. And y'all, I just also want to preface, because part of me is like, do I need to tell these bad date story times? Like, I don't want to give the vibe or the impression that I just always go on bad dates, because the thing is, if the date is good, I don't want to talk about it, you know, because that's kind of like my business now. But if it's a one bad date, it's like that's kind of irrelevant to me, so I tell the story because it's funny and a cautionary tale and red flags to look for on your next date. So just as a preface, well, I guess it was a couple episodes ago I told another bad date story time, but anyway, so this one was weird because I got none of these red flags before. I met this guy when I was out, so he finally made some dinner reservations. And it was very chic, and then he, like, checked in with me the day before, like, confirming, and I was like, this is chic. Like, I don't want to say I had high hopes, because I don't really get that. Like, I'm like a we'll see, so far this is trending in the right direction, was, like, my first vibe. Because I just feel like at this point, typically I can tell if someone's going to be odd. But I guess it's like you never know, and that's why it's just good to have no expectations. Someone in my TikTok live was saying how they always get nervous before dates, but babes, you really have to remind yourself, and I'm talking about dates with men, like I have not dated a woman or anyone else. I have not dated a date though. So I don't know about that, but as far as a date with a man, you have to remind yourself that he's there to impress you. Don't go into it with desperation or, oh my god, I want this guy to like me so much or anything like that. Point being, I don't really get nervous for dates. I think it's good to be curious. If anything, be nervous, like, is he gonna be a dweeb? You don't need to be nervous in the sense of like, oh my god, is he gonna like me? Because, babes, come on. And that's fine if you feel like that, but it's something you can overcome, period. I just noticed several times throughout this date, and this was like a Michelin star restaurant, like it was nice, that all the food was amazing, by the way. He just kept saying little things to try to make me insecure or like doubt myself or like this and that. And I think what's really important to remember about guys like this, and again, I don't know if he's this kind of guy, I don't know. But in general, guys like that, who kind of want you to be small, who are kind of there to put you down because they feel insecure or threatened or whatever the case may be, they're not going to make logical sense. So for example, he kind of already knew what I did, like as far as content creation stuff, but he was like asking me some more questions about that, which I talked about this in my vlog, but that was kind of weird to me just in the way he was asking. Like, it didn't seem like he was really curious. It was more like he was trying to figure me out. And I just don't really talk about work on dates. Like, I won't ask about a guy's job unless he brings it up, because I feel like often it can come across like that, and a lot of people are going to take it like that, like, oh, they're trying to figure out how much money I make or like how successful I am. And you can tell a lot of that, because obviously that's important. I think especially just like when you're talking to a man, you want to date a man who is successful and who does make some good money, who can be a provider. It's just like, duh, but you don't need to flat out ask. Like, there's a lot you can tell just by how he acts and like his presentation and all of that. So I don't really talk about work. Oh my god, y'all, the battery was fully charged. Like, oh my god. After retrograde, I'm buying a new camera. If you're just listening to the audio, I guess it's fine. So I won't bring up really like stuff. And it was also weird because anytime I would ask him a question, which y'all know I've told you on a date, it's better to be quiet. Not like be quiet, but it's better to like let the man talk about themselves, because you can just like peep so much. But he was asking me so many questions, but in a weird way, like not that he was so interested in me or really wanted to get to know me, is how it came across to me, okay? It was like he was trying to figure me out. And so he's like asking me about content creation. He's like, well, that is not really like sustainable. Like, what's your 5-year plan? And I was like, oh, because, you know, I'm trying to be like girly and like cute. Like, I'm not here to talk business with you. Like, what? So I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, maybe I'll like write another book. Like, I really want to do that. Or like write a book, period. I think I just said write a book. And he's like, why? Nobody reads. And I'm like, Like, that just kind of took me by surprise because I'm used to dating guys that read. You know, all my friends read, my family reads, like, I read. Like, it's not some, like, super exotic thing to me. Like, y'all read, y'all be asking me for my Goodreads link, you know? Like, it's not some weird like, oh my god, you read? Like, it's not a weird, crazy thing. So I was just like, oh, you don't read? And I did not mean that as a diss. I just genuinely, like, was, like, surprised. Like, I'm like, oh, you don't read? Because he seemed smart, you know? Like, it was just, like, weird. Like, he wasn't some, like, dweeb bro in that sense, like... And he was like, well, nobody reads. Nobody has time to read. And I was like, oh, well, I read. And he's like, well, I don't know. Maybe you should think of a different plan because that doesn't really sound like a good idea since nobody reads. So you're kind of trying to call me dumb when I'm the one that reads and you don't. You know? Then he was also just, in the way he was asking me questions about, like, my job, he was kind of just, like, insinuating that I made no money and was kind of, like, making fun of me for going to, or not going to college, which that's not something I'm insecure about, you know? And it's just like, if you were a masculine man, you wouldn't care about that because, you know, it's just like, I'm not saying a masculine man wants a woman to be dumb, but it's like, you don't want a woman for, like, how successful she is in her career, or, like, it's just been proven time and time again statistically, and it literally has statistics about that in this book, that the more successful a woman is, the harder it is for her to date. And it's just that classic example, like, in Sex and the City, there's even an episode, Miranda, the high-status lawyer, can't get a date because all these guys are intimidated by what she does, and then she lies to this guy that she's a flight attendant, and he's, like, obsessed with her. If you want to be for real, like, a real masculine man wouldn't care, but, you know, just, like, in general, it's, like, a guy is not gonna care. Like, they just shouldn't care, I think. Like, they shouldn't want it either way. It should just be, like, I like you for you. Anyway, then, this is what really just stood out to me the most in, like, so much so that I had to go to the bathroom and text my friends. The check comes, and I said this in my vlog, y'all, I said this in my live, I don't get awkward when the check comes, because I know how to act. You just have to be confident, you look at them in their eyes, you say, thank you so much, this was such a nice time, I had such a good time with you. And that's just, like, classy, feminine thing to do. You do not have to act awkward, you don't have to fake look for your wallet, you don't have to get up and go to the bathroom and avoid the situation. Like, you can look them in their face and just smile and be like, thank you. A real masculine man is going to want to pay and want to, you know, take care of it because it shows that he's the man and he can do that. My point being, I don't get awkward when the check comes. This man picked up the check and looked at it for so long that I'm getting uncomfortable and starting to feel awkward. And mind you, I've had, like, a couple drinks at this point, you know? There's no reason I should be feeling awkward and uncomfortable. But he's just holding it in his hand, looking at it. And it's kind of giving, like, broke, too. Like, it's weird because you invited me out. You picked this restaurant. You ordered everything that we just... And that was the thing, too. It's like, he was, like, mad I didn't want mezcal and I wanted tequila in my drink. And I didn't, like, ask him to switch it. I just, like, chose a margarita instead of, like, whatever mezcal drink he got. Like, he was, like, kind of, like, pissed about that. So it's getting, like, controlling. So then, after he's, like, holding it in his hand, just looking at it for mad long, I think I said, like, thank you for dinner. Like, this was so nice. And he's like, well, you better pick a good place for the next one. And I know he didn't say, like, the next one's on you. But whatever he said after that, like, it was kind of the same vibe as that. Like, it insinuated that, or it was, like, another way of saying that. And I just kind of looked at him, and he's like, oh, just kidding. And it's just like, this... Oh my god. Like, that was really what did it for me, because it's like, you're acting weird this whole time, and then you're, like, so this was the thing, this is what I'm saying, like, guys that are kind of weird, insecure, controlling, their actions, or, like, what they say doesn't make logical sense. So, like, at first, it's like, he's kind of trying to make me feel bad that I don't have, like, a better job, or, like, a real job, or whatever the case may be, whatever he was trying to do, like, trying to insult my career,
So then it's like, okay, well, if I make no money, then why are you like asking me basically to pay for the next date and like acting weird and like wanting me to offer to pay half? You know, it's like choose one. Like, am I broke or have I got it like that? Because you're kind of acting like you don't know which way to go. Like, which is going to make me more insecure. I don't know. So that was very odd. But then he's like messaging me after the date. So we just like go home after that, went our separate ways. And then he's like messaging me after the date, like, oh my God, I had such a good time with you. I can't wait to see you again. Like, kisses, like, and I was like, that's odd because, like, it wasn't coming across like he was having such a good time. Like, it was coming across like he was, like, being weird. Like, I don't know. It's just, like, when you're used to being treated with respect and, like, princess queen, you know, then it's just kind of like shocking when someone doesn't treat you like that. And the thing is, like, I don't walk around entitled or like any type of way. Like, the guys who like me will say like how sweet I am, how feminine I am, how girly I am, and they like that. And so if someone doesn't like that, it's like kind of a red flag, because how could you not like that? It's not like just something not being your cup of tea. It's like you're going out of your way to like try to make a woman feel like insecure or like insulted or just like off. And they do that because they want you to like feel like they want your approval. Because if I'm wanting your approval, I'll do what you say, you know? So that's why so often guys like that will also be controlling, because it's like they don't feel empowered in themselves, so they try to put power onto other people. But yeah, so just cautionary tale. And just like my TikTok, y'all, just like I told y'all, you can never take a man's compliments to heart, especially just like in, you know, when you're first getting to know someone or early stages of dating, because he's just trying to get you in the bed. So you can't take compliments to heart, but you can definitely not take a man's insults to heart, because he's just trying to make you feel he's trying to make you feel insecure and small and down, so that you won't be empowered to leave the situation and know that you can go find someone better. So you gotta nip that right in the bud and be like, see it for what it is and walk away. So again, that's why I share these story times just as cautionary tales with a little bit of an LOL. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to share it on your IG story, tweet me a screenshot, etc. Follow me on IG and TikTok, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye, everyone.